Hello and welcome to my channel. So we are now firmly in the month of April, and I finally feel just a little bit safer. And I say that because, number one, I'm a tad bit dramatic. Number two, I pay really close attention to not only what's going on in my life, but in the lives of celebrities and popular figures. And number three, March was rough as hell for women. And I think it's finally safe to talk about it now that we're completely out of that month. And what makes it so ironic is March is National Women's Month. And so you would think like women would have had a great month, but like we didn't. And I say we, I know on a personal level, like it was all right. I know for you, it might have been fantastic. But as I said earlier, I tend to pay really, really close attention to what's happening in the lives of celebrities and individuals I will never meet and do not know. And I couldn't help but notice a continuous pattern throughout the month of March. Women who were public figures were getting their asses handed to them. There was an uprising, there were twists and turns, and it was incredibly dramatic. And so I just want to take a moment and pay a little bit of attention to the whirlwind that was March, if you happen to be a famous person who was a woman. First person I want to talk about who had a hell of a March was Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Last December, when people first started talking about, or really last fall, people first started talking about on social media how excited they were that Gypsy Rose Blanchard was going to be released from prison. If you remember, Gypsy Rose is the woman who unalived her mother. Do we have to say unalived over here on YouTube? I'm not sure. I know that on other apps you have to say that. Anyway, she is the woman who unalived her mother with the help of her boyfriend, Nick Goodjohn. And a lot of people feel like that unaliving was warranted because Gypsy Rose grew up in the household of a woman who had Munchausen's by proxy syndrome, which means that she believed her daughter had all these diseases, made things up in order to receive attention. The story is out there. It's been out there for a long time. I'm not going to recount the whole thing right now, but I will just say that initially when Gypsy was in jail, because she served, I believe, 8 years in prison for helping to, because she didn't do the unaliving herself. She wasn't responsible for that herself. It was Nick. However, she told him what she wanted done. They communicated about it like that. She definitely had a hand in it. And so she received a prison sentence, not a very heavy one. She didn't have to serve life or anything like that, but she served 8 years. And when she got out, she had a husband and she had a social media career. She had documentaries to promote. She had books to promote. She was doing interviews. She was doing like a tour. And it seemed like people really, really wanted her around. In fact, this was a little soundbite that went viral on TikTok. Basically, Gypsy Rose celebrating the fact that she was on top of the world.
You guys, I'm here with Gypsy Rose herself, the celeb of the moment. So I know you have so many followers, so much love on social media. But what I want to know is, what do you have to say to the haters?
Well, you know, can't bring me down. I'm on a fire right now. I'm living my best life, and y'all can't take that from me.
And the D is...
I would be remiss here if I didn't revisit the incredibly important piece of pop culture lore that is Gypsy Rose clapping back at people who were hating on her husband when she first got out of prison. And she said, you know what? Hey, baby, don't listen to the haters. You know what we have, blah, blah, blah. And then she complimented him on his fire D. Of course, we know that means fire dick. And yeah, that was something people referenced a lot at the beginning of the year when it came to Gypsy. You know, leave her alone. She's in a relationship where she seems to be very fulfilled. She's on top of the world, the next big influencer. She's having great sex, and there was nothing we could do about it. And I thought that that was something that was worth revisiting. So that's what I've done. Anyway, back to the video. And like people suspected, shortly after or while she was saying things like that and going on her little press tour and doing whatever she was going to do, there was a feeling in the air that she would be brought down very soon. What people predicted, myself included, was that Gypsy would fall into a pattern that happens to a lot of women who become public figures, which is people lift you up. They're really excited about you. They want to celebrate you. And then when you're on the top, they start asking what you did to deserve to be there. and start looking for any reason they can to bring you down. And that's exactly what happened with Gypsy. People started questioning, why are we platforming a woman who had a hand in unaliving her mother? I mean, yes, we understand the situation that happened with her, the situation she was in, and it was dire, and we know that. But should we really be like excited that she is a social media influencer now? Like, are we really going to buy HelloFresh from Gypsy Rose? Is that how this is going to work? And I think actually those were valid questions. I just hate the fact that those questions were asked after people made TikTok after TikTok after TikTok calling her mother and being excited about the fact that she was coming back and saying that they were going to show up to the jail and pick her up and supporting her and basically showing themselves to be fans of this woman before she even got out of prison, only to swiftly turn their back and change their support as soon as she was released. I think that that's a little unfair, and it was a very swift change, a very swift response. And at the beginning of March, Gypsy officially decided to take herself off the internet altogether. No Instagram, no TikTok, nothing. Now, she did still have a private Facebook group where she announced that her and her husband had separated, which was interesting because at the beginning of March, people were saying that she was actually with child. So for that to turn around too, it seemed like March was a month that set a lot of people, including Gypsy, on like a corrective course. And part of that was her realizing that social media was not a place she needed to be. I think also her parole officer had a hand in that because some of the things she was doing might have gotten her in trouble as far as getting her case reopened if she talked too much about what happened back then. Also, realizing that this relationship that she built with a man while she was behind bars might not be the healthiest thing. I think it's worth mentioning here that he did look a lot like her mother. And then also realizing that social media audiences are very fickle. And one day, yes, they will platform you and put you up on a pedestal and say, this is great, we're so proud of you. And then the next day they start questioning what you did to deserve to be there. And if, like in her situation, it involves a very serious crime, your life as an influencer, your shelf life is going to be very, very short. So yeah, Gypsy was someone who had a very interesting March. And let's move on. Another social media influencer who had an interesting March was Elyse Meyer. Elyse came into our consciousness, into our lives, into our minds, because a few years ago, she told a very, very viral story about a date she went on where a man ate a lot of tacos. Elyse initially blew up on TikTok, where I think that's the place to really, like, if you have a really viral story and it's terrible, a la Risa Tisa, TikTok is the place to tell it if you want to be a star. And that's what happened with Elyse. She was in lots of magazines like People magazine and probably some other ones. She got a fancy little podcast, I believe it's called. It's funny because it's true. It was a storytime podcast. She was at all the conventions speaking. She has a big platform on TikTok, big platform on YouTube, big platform on Instagram. Elyse was everywhere. And, occasionally she would get hate. Occasionally she would get online criticism. And she's definitely not a stranger to getting on camera and crying and asking people why they're so evil. But what happened to her, or what had been happening to her the past few months, was something that a lot of bigger creators dealt with. And it was in response to the conflict that's going on with Palestine and Israel. And what that is people just questioning why someone has a platform, especially if they're not going to speak out about what is happening in those areas or in that area of the world. If they're not going to talk about the genocide, if they're not going to talk about the fighting, if they're not going to say free Palestine, if they're not going to say these things on their platform, then there was definitely action that people took to make their lives a living hell. And there's a group of social media, there's a group of people online that call themselves the Watermelon Mafia. And the reason why they have to call themselves that is because watermelon is the safe way they can discuss what's happening overseas without getting their content banned, their accounts banned, their things taken down, because TikTok will do it. And, somebody had a great video about this. His name is Therapy Jeff. He said that instead of being upset at these creators for not speaking out, consider the fact that we are working on an app where you can't even talk about it unless you refer to it as watermelon. Like, it's the platform a lot of times. It's not just the creator. But anyway, the Watermelon Mafia, when they decided that Elyse shouldn't have a platform if she didn't speak out on these things, they went after her. And what that looks like is her comment section, anytime she would talk about anything in her life, be filled with watermelons. It would be filled with questions about Palestine, questions about what was happening in Gaza. It would be filled with just people basically overriding whatever she was talking about in the video to bring awareness to that cause, which is fine. That's fine. But it can also be overwhelming. And I have my own feelings and thoughts about that frame of thinking and why people believe that that's okay. However, I especially had thoughts about it when Elyse made a video talking about her son. She gave birth earlier this year, and her son had a disease, a heart condition, and he had to go in for surgery. And she made a couple videos talking about his surgery. He was a newborn. And she also made videos talking about her own mental health. She's been very open about having like depression issues, etc. And the Watermelon Mafia decided that not even then, not even with those topics, was this a time to use her platform to talk about her life. She needed to be talking about what was going on in Palestine and in Gaza. And I think people were very split then. I think there was a realization, or maybe a reckoning that perhaps there were a lot of ideas. I'm trying to pick my words very carefully here. All I will say is Elyse decided enough was enough, and she completely took herself all the way off of TikTok. She still has a YouTube, she still has an Instagram, but on TikTok specifically, she said, I'm sorry, I can't do it. If I can't in any way use my platform the way I think that is safe and the way that I think is the way I think I'll be the most effective, and if I'm only acceptable to you all if I'm doing it the way you want me to do it, then unfortunately I will not be able to be here. And I don't blame her. I think it was a smart decision. But she's another person who had to say, you know what, social media, you can have it. I'll do something else. And she's still online. She's still online, but just not in the same way. If you had told me a few years ago that this woman who blew up because of these stories about the tacos and was everywhere in like 2021 because she was such a great storyteller and it was such a big deal. If you had told me that this year she would have said, hey, I'm not doing it anymore, I wouldn't have believed you. But I do understand. And so, yes, she is someone else who had a very dramatic March. Okay, another person who is on social media who had a rough March, another woman, is Jojo Chaos. Now, I was late to the Dance Moms game. I did not watch it when it was on, and I only started watching it last year, and I only made it to like season 3 because I'm sorry, it is not enjoyable for me to watch those women just yell, like scream at each other. But my point is that I didn't watch Dance Moms, so I've never even seen any episodes that Jojo Chaos is in. I was 105 when she started coming out on YouTube with her bows and all that stuff. I didn't have any toddler girls in my life at that time or any young tweens who were really into that. So I didn't know JoJo until I jumped on social media a couple years later, and old viral clips of Dance Moms were everywhere. And I was like, oh, okay, that's who this is. Like, I'd always heard about her, but I didn't know who she was. And so she started building up her own platform over on TikTok. She started, people wanted her to, or she started interacting with people. She's had some relationship drama unfold. But what's been really interesting is to watch her grow into a young woman after we met her as like a small baby girl, watching her come into her own with regards to her sexuality, taking risks when it comes to her tattoos, her hair. And she has definitely run into some mocking online because of various decisions that she made when it comes to her presentation. But this past month was wild because JoJo has a song coming out called Karma. And I don't think it's a bad song. Not at all. I think it's interesting that she's singing because she has sung before. And I was like, what is this? I don't know. What is this? But hey, she's singing and she comes out with this song and the song's not bad. But then she showed a dance. She showed a dance that she did. And that dance, here's what I'll say. One thing I noticed when it came to JoJo with me is I questioned, how did she make it into Abby's supposed to be this big day. I think it's just like her energy, right? But I never felt like she was a great dancer. Jojo just seemed like she was somebody who, she learned the choreography. Like it wasn't, if I'm watching a team, my eyes wouldn't be drawn to Jojo in any way. So she does this choreography, which it's hard to make it look good, but not if you're a real dancer. Here is a clip or a video of actual dancers doing the choreo. And like you can see Miss Ma'am in the heels right here. Like she's a beast. But Jojo was never to me like this amazing dancer. And so to see her attempt this choreography, I was like, okay, that's a choice. And the internet ripped her to shreds. Oh my God. Like the mocking, it was a lot. It was a lot. And, Jojo, she's taking it in stride, but it just makes me wonder about that very, very hard transition that child stars have to take to trying to be adults and how this is going to go for her. I don't know. I will stay tuned, but I definitely think that debut not going the way she planned was very JLO-esque, and I'm going to get to JLO in a second. But it was also, it was just another part of an extremely dramatic month if you happen to be a public figure who is a woman online. Now, you don't just have to be famous. A lot of these people that I just named, they're famous. They have a big platform for a reason, whether it's because they went viral and they spun it into something else, or they were part of a really tragic crime, or they were a displaced child star. Like, these are actual famous people, right? However, anytime you put yourself on the internet, you start talking, you do whatever, you are now officially a public figure. And that means that, especially if you get a large platform, right? So that means that you have to be careful about what you say, specifically about your private life. And that brings me to a young lady who also had a very rough March because she decided to share the details of a terrible girls' trip that she went on with TikTok. And the video has now been viewed, I think, 18 million times. And by the end of the week that she decided to share this video, she was being sued for defamation. Now, the defamation lawsuit and her situation are not really, the girls' trip are not necessarily related, but it was just like, oh my God, the turn things can take on the internet. So I'm going to go back to the beginning here. A young woman named Kalia jumped online and was like, hey, I want to talk about this girls' trip I just got back from. Somebody on the trip only spent $135 or only brought $135 with them. And I'm so pissed. And I'm going to tell you everything else that they did on this trip. And the second she did that, I just kind of tensed up. I was like, this isn't going to be good. Because I know what it's like to share a story about a bad girls' trip. Now, I still have one up on my channel right now about the time that I went to Joshua Tree, because that was just, ooh. I'll tell you what, when I shared it, it had been 3 years since it had happened. I was no longer friends with any of those people. And I wasn't connected with them on social media in any way. The story did not go viral. It was just, and honestly, it's such a wild experience. And I have pictures and I have, all of my rules for like keeping content up. That story follows. But I still have experience sharing a girls' trip short story, sharing events and experiences that happen with people in my life and having to pay real consequences for that. So when I saw this young woman jump online and say this, I was like, this isn't going to be good. Okay. Things unfolded exactly the way I expected. She told this story and people were like, oh my God, this sounds terrible. Like, oh, this terrible person, we can't believe it. Then the birthday girl, because she wasn't the birthday girl hopped on and was like, yeah, y'all, I was in it. It was my birthday. I mean, that's why I did it. Hey, whatever. I hope, blah. And for a little while, it seemed like everybody was just going to be like, oh, yes, the villain in this story is the girl who showed up with $135. She's the villain. But the internet went and did what the internet always does. And they wanted to find, especially with viral content, they wanted to find that girl and they wanted to give her a chance to tell her story. And by the end of the week, when I say they were holding multiple lives, multiple people had weighed in and we've got the other girl. We can tell her. It spun completely out of control. That girl, the original poster, deactivated her profile so many times. And eventually it was decided by the internet because they sided with the girl who had only brought, listen, it was a bunch of mess. And it unfolded because she brought this conflict to the internet. Something I've noticed is that nobody really has a lot of grace for you if you come online bitching about a friend, because people can see that or have been in that situation from all different vantage points, especially if you're a woman. And so you might present a case and be like, hey, this is what happened with my friend. But there's somebody out there who's been on the other side of that might want to swoop in and be like, no, it doesn't sound like you were right here. This is what I think. Oh, well, this is what I think. I knew someone like you. And it becomes this thing that is so much bigger than it ever needs to be. In my opinion, if you have beef with people in your life, specifically friends and family, and you still want to be friends with them, or you're still friends with them, or the situation just happened, leave it off the internet, because what's going to happen is it's going to spin into something that you never expected. And it's very rarely a good thing. And that's what this young woman experienced. And she wasn't the only one who came online in the month of March specifically and talked about terrible girls trips. But hers was the one that went the most viral and had the fallout that I expected just from experience. I was like, this is not going to go well for this girl. And what I think is interesting also about this is there were people who said, consider yourself lucky if you have friends who don't just run to the internet with all your business. And I think that that's very hypocritical, because those same people, well, I don't know. But we also live in a society where we're like, tell your story, don't be afraid. Okay, well, beef with your friends is part of your story. However, what you need to understand, if you ever have a story, you want to tell it, is that the internet is very, very specific about which kind of stories they'll allow. And always know, and I've said this before, once you release it, you don't know what people are going to do with it. You have no idea. And a little story you told, a little, some conflict you shared could spin into something that you never expected. And it's really not worth all that. Just charge it to the game. Don't go on the trip with the person anymore. Move on with your life. But some lessons are very hard and hard won. And well, I hope that she figures it out. I hope that it all works out for her, because that's tough. Two other women who had kind of a rough March online. Both of them found out that came out and said they were expecting children. And the internet responded in two very different ways. The first one was, what was her name? Drea, Basketball Webs Drea, Elder Millennial Drea. Drea is from my class of women posting and showing up on the internet. Of course, we were very different. But I can remember Drea back in like 2014, 2015 on Instagram and her Fine Ass Girls brand, before she got into the relationship with that guy who plays for the Dallas Cowboys. Before she got into a relationship with him, and I remember them together, and then I remember her getting pregnant and having her son Drew. And then I remember she started a clothing line. Like, Drea's been busy. She's been online. She's been out there for a long time. So it was announced that she was pregnant again. And this time, though, she was pregnant by a young man who is old enough to be, or the same age as her son. And that, I find, because me and Dre are like a year or two apart. Like, we're not, I'm her elder, but not by much. I find it wouldn't be for me. And it's one of those things where if it happens, you really don't want to be a public figure at that time, in my opinion. But she is. And so people had a lot to say about that. And it wasn't positive. So I wishing her a healthy and happy pregnancy. But it's definitely, that's... Clearly, this situation befuddles me, so I'm going to move on. Another woman who announced her pregnancy, and it was received kind of awkwardly in the month of March, was Jojo Chaos. Joy, though, Joyce was different. Every one of her children's fathers are very, very wealthy. Very wealthy. The first one, well, I wouldn't say very, but wealthy enough. The first one is Little Bow Wow. The second one is Future. And the third one is a professional athlete. She at least we can say that they'll be taken care of financially. But Joy also does a lot of things for herself. She's very well known on social media. She has these. I still want to take one of these little classes in my life. I've never taken like a heels dance class. I feel like I should take one. But she's very known. She's very well known on her own. people responded to her as well for, a single woman, 3 babies' fathers. I always think it's interesting, though, the way that Black women are responded to versus the way that white women are responded to when they have that reality. A great example of this is Kate Hudson, who does indeed have 3 babies' fathers. And you never heard about it. Media didn't drag her through the mud. It was seen as kind of this romantic thing. Like, she's young and she's in love with this person, so they have a baby. Now I'm in love with this person, so that I have a baby. Now finally I'm in love with this person. I have my next baby. Anyway, Joy and Drea, I hope they have successful pregnancies, but they had really, really special times on the internet in the month of March. Okay, let's move on from people who are just social media personalities, and let's talk about some women who have a slightly bigger footprint when it comes to media and the rough March that they had. I'm going to start off with Amanda Seales. I know I've already made a video about her, but the concept of likability seemed to be something that people really grasped onto from this whole issue. I, as a person, really, really bonded with Amanda's initial rant against whatever was happening with her, because I know what it's like to want to feel validated and not have that be a possibility. However, the subject of likability came up a lot around Amanda, and what I didn't like was people pretending or acting as if the Hollywood elites were the only people who move a certain way when it comes to whether or not you are likable, as far as inviting you into their spaces is concerned. When everyday regular people do that all the time. If they decide they don't like you, they dig up stuff and try and deplatform you if you're an influencer. If they decide they don't like you, they don't go see your movies. If they decide they don't like you, they don't vote you into office. If they decide they don't like you, they don't watch your shows. If they decide they don't like you, they don't invite you to the family barbecue. Being liked is a huge part of having a successful life. You can be a deplorable individual under the surface, but if you have that ability to be engaging and magnetic, that will get you into so many more doors than maybe what you know or what you're capable of doing. And when the Essence article came out about Amanda, I actually recorded an addendum to my initial video talking about her, where I went off on Essence. I was like, this is mean girl shit. You guys should know better than this. I can't believe. And then I saw all of the other news publications that came out and said the same thing. And it kind of made me think, what's been doing to these people? What's been going on behind closed doors? And in the comment section of my video about Amanda, someone said, people make allowances for who they choose to. There's people who have actually, other people were saying, there's people who have committed crimes that are at these award shows. But here's the thing. It comes down to who were they nice to and who are they in cahoots with? And does Amanda have those types of relationships? We don't like it because it's not fair, but likability is a huge part of social currency. The more people know about you, the more they get a feel for who you are, the more they can decide whether or not they want to let you into their spaces or they want to still support you. So when I sat back and thought about the Amanda thing, I was like, I get her 100% on the validation and learning where to put your feelings of, hey, I feel valued here, I feel respected, or I feel invited to this space, like learning where to really put weight on that. But as far as the likability, that is unfortunately a huge thing. As much as we don't like it, as much as it shouldn't count, as much as it should, and should it not count? Because again, when Essence wrote their article, I was like, that's mean, that they're mean. Then so many other publications came out and said the same thing. And I was like, okay, we may need to look at, for those of us who don't know her, who haven't interacted, what are those relationships like? What has that been like? Because there may be a story there that we're unaware of. And to pretend as if we don't do the same things in our lives. We don't lock people out. Somebody can be so smart. They can be a great hairstylist, but if they have a nasty attitude, you're not going back. Somebody can be so attractive. You go on a date with them. Oh, they're so attractive. They have so much going for them. Bad attitude. I don't want to deal with you no more. So we do it all the time. So we can't expect people in Hollywood not to do it. We can't expect it not to be done on a macro level if we do it on a micro level every single day. And yes, just like in our lives, people get away with things that we don't let other people get away with. And it's usually because of the tie that we have with that person. And that's where personal power and strategy, that's where a lot of other things come into play. But the likability thing really hit Amanda hard. And the conversations around it were multifaceted. And I was following that discourse. And so this is the last thing I have to say about it. Likability is real. You may not like it, but it matters if you're liked. It does. And if you want to be places and you know that the obstacle there is they don't like me, you either figure out how to have them like you, or you decide that you don't want to be in those spaces. That's the black and white of it, in my opinion. One person who is going to have to make a big decision about how she is received as far as likability is Jennifer Lopez. When I say that woman had a tough march, oh my God. Jennifer Lopez, JLO, I never would have expected that she would be sitting right here in this space when it comes to the public's treatment of her and how people regard her. Again, I'm a teenager in the early 2000s. I'm a middle schooler in the mid 90s. JLo is everywhere. And I'll be honest with you, I never got the hype, but I always recognized her as an important part of whatever was happening in pop culture, whether it was her relationships, her songs where, hey, she can't sing, right? But some of them were fun. I love Feeling So Good. I love On the Floor. I love Let's Get Loud, even though that's not originally her. It's Gloria Estefan. I don't like Waiting for Tonight. I don't like Jenny for the Block. I don't like anything she did with Ja Rule, and I don't like My Love Don't Cost a Thing. So there's a lot of songs from her that I don't like, but there's some that I do. So she was just a necessary evil when it came to pop culture. And not that she's an evil, but like JLo was just around. She seemed like a favorite of the big machine, of the establishment. And we were going to see her. She was going to be at the award show. She was going to be walking the red carpets. The right people liked JLo, and it was very obvious. I will say I feel like she's a better actress than she is musician. And every time she's been on screen, well, most of the time, she's done good work. I do think she focuses too much on being a romantic comedy lead or trying to put hey, at least somebody's putting them out. Rom-coms completely stopped being produced. I don't watch them. I don't watch her movies anymore, especially if she's getting married in one of them. I'm just like, it's all right. But a lot of the movies she's been in, I have really liked. So yeah, she was never my favorite. You were never going to hear me say, oh my God, I had the latest Jennifer Lopez album. I can't listen to it. I'm sorry. But I never expected, I thought she was respected. And I was like, she's got fans somewhere, right? I never expected her to be facing what she's facing now. And if you've been hiding under a rock, then you might not know that Jennifer Lopez in February and definitely in March, she released a project called That Was Me or This Is Me Now. And along with the project, she released a behind the scenes documentary. And when I tell you the internet flamed her for both of those things, and not just for those, due to the fact that those things were released, she had a clip of her years ago, 2 years ago, doing 73 questions or whatever with Vogue magazine. And in the clip, she talks about being a New Yorker and what her go-to order at the bodega is. And you would have thought that woman was planning a mass murder. She said to the camera, she said, I love to get a ham and cheese on a roll, a bag of chips, and an orange drink. If you know, you know. And people heard that, and I think they heard, I don't know what they heard, but the way the internet was like, she is the biggest clown in the entire world. Now, I've been listening to the discourse because, again, I don't really have a dog in the fight. She ain't, to me, that's how I feel about JLo. But this hate, I was like, what is going on? So the first thing is a bunch of New Yorkers, chimed in and said, what are you talking about as far as bodega orders? That's not even something we get. And what we found out after enough people chimed in and were talking about it, we found out that because JLo was born in 1969, she's in her mid 50s right now. So when she was growing up, it was a different product that was available at the bodega than what might be available now. So you had a whole bunch of young people that were going into bodegas and trying to figure out, what is she talking about? And I also love the fact that this revealed that geographically speaking, there are so many things that people might understand in one area, but not in another area. So there were so many people who were like, by the way, what is a bodega? Please help. Anyway, so JLo's bodega order was discussed ad nauseum, right? Then she had a clip from the documentary that Amazon Prime was like passing around, because I don't think nobody told Amazon Prime that the people wouldn't really mess with JLo like that no more. So they produced it. They sold this documentary. They distribute it. She has a part of the documentary where she's sitting on a seat and her hair is everywhere. And she's like, this reminds me of when I was a crazy girl running around in the Bronx. People didn't like that she kept talking about the Bronx. You know, her whole, I'm from the Bronx. You know what I mean? I hear that and I hear her screaming and I'm still Jenny from the block. The point is people were like, girl, you went to private school. I grew up with you. Your hair never looked like that. You ain't never been crazy. This woman got called out consistently, not just because I guess the folks are tired of her after 30 years of having a career. She's definitely not going to be one of those artists where she can get away with doing a documentary and a visual album. And I'm going to talk more about those projects that she did in a second. But JLo is not going to be somebody, apparently, that people revere and that people are like, oh, wow, 30 years. You go, queen. It is very much more like, oh, wow, 30 years. How did you get away with this? How did you do this? Wow, we have never liked it. So she was getting called out, though, for a lack of authenticity, as if being from the Bronx and being from New York and having this certain background was just something she had made up. And while I don't think it's completely made up, I think she's leaned into it a lot. And she was also getting called out because apparently, like Amanda Seales, she has a likability issue. And in JLo's case, there are several documented situations where she has been horrible to people, specifically fans and other women. And these people were coming forward and sharing these stories. My favorite one was somebody who has worked in Hollywood as a producer. And they were talking about how JLo has these rules where in her trailer and stuff, you can't look, or when she's on a project, you can't look her in the eye or you will get fired. And she likes rose petals in her toilet. Now, this is a person who says they worked with her. This is not just a rumor. I remember a couple years ago, people were saying that Beyonce carries her own toilet around with her everywhere she goes. And Mama Tina came out and said, that's not true. That's just a rumor. But these are people who have said, hey, we work with her. We know people who work with her. I'm a producer. I live in Hollywood. Like, look me up. I'm letting you know right now. That's what this woman is like on set. She's terrible. And the stories kept coming. They kept coming. And so just to take it all the way back to the documentary and the film that she made, the documentary is, it's documenting this process of her making this film. And the film is a metacognitive ode to her search for a soulmate who turns out to be Ben Affleck. It was always Ben Affleck. And he's great, by the way, in the documentary. First of all, he's sexy as hell. He's always been a beautiful man. But the way he interacts with her and the way that he tries to talk to her and just basically tries to talk some sense into her about this project. Apparently, she invested $20 million of her own dollars into this project. And I will say this about it. It's not bad. Honestly, we've seen worse. If she wanted to do this and she was Beyonce, she could actually sing these songs, because I tried to watch it. I did. And I watched it enough to where I was like, I'm intrigued. But then she started singing and I said, I'm turning it off. I refuse to go through 2 hours or so of this with her singing. It's not pleasurable to me. I'm not going to do it. There was a clip going around of all of the celebrities and stuff that she wanted involved in the project who said, no, we can't do it. But she got some really great people, especially for a little scene that she does about astrology and the zodiac and all that. I have my opinions on that scene. But she got some really great people. However, in the documentary, so not talking about the actual movie anymore, but in the documentary, people are consistently saying to her, she's also consistently saying to herself, is this something I have to do? Do I need to do this? And JLo acknowledges, like, I don't need to do this. I don't need to create this thing, but I feel like I should do it. I'm an artist. Like, you got to take risks. You got to bet on yourself. And I think we all learned from this situation because, man, this could not have blown up in her face anymore. Like, she comes out with this documentary. She comes out with this her magnum opus in her mind, right? This ode to her love life, the greatest love story never told, the ode to her and Ben's journey together, or her journey to her with herself defined, whatever. And the way that it just revealed, instead of how much people love her and they appreciate her art or whatever, which is, I think, what she wanted, it revealed that nobody's messing with her like that no more. Like, people don't, you go to her comment section and it's like, oh my God. And it's crazy because if this is the amount of hate and whatever that was laying under the surface the whole time, why ain't nobody tell her? I mean, this is how you have to find out that nobody wants to see yourself. Like, I have empathy for her as someone who, and I've documented it here on this channel, but finding out how people really feel about you when it's not positive is so jolting. And so I have empathy for her. And I can only imagine like investing 20 minutes. And she kept saying in the video, am I going to be ridiculed again? It's a bit like she's breaking down in tears. You can tell something in her is saying, girl, don't do it. So I have empathy for her because she believed in these kind of intangible platitudes that we throw around. You know, believe in yourself, bet on yourself. But sometimes Dave Matthews said it best. And those of you who are young out there who missed the 90s and the early 2000s, you may not know what Dave Matthews or who he is, but it's Dave Matthews Band. And he has a song. And in the song, he says, I think I can. Sometimes that is the problem. Sometimes our desires and our dreams and our ideas, they actually are things that should not be carried out. It should not. And when you have so many people around you who are like, girl, what's going on? Maybe you should listen. But I think JLo's journey in life in general is learning to make peace with her sizable ego. She talks about her childhood. She calls her mama out for being a narcissist. I guess they don't talk no more. I don't know. It's just very painful to watch this icon of the early 2000s like come crumbling down. And it's just painful because it's a part of my childhood. And then they threw her in there with Diddy, and that's the whole thing. I'm staying away from it. I'm not going to even talk about it. I can't. But they threw her in there because her public downfall mirrored his timing as well, which was crazy. If you look in her comments, everybody's just like, JLo, talk about Diddy. JLo. The woman had a rough March. And just from human to human, I hope she has a better April. I hope that reveal of how people really feel about her has taught her something about herself. Ben says in the documentary, he says, no amount of followers, no amount of love will ever be enough for Jennifer. Just like when you're an alcoholic, you have to come to the decision or the understanding that no amount of alcohol will ever be enough. And since it will never be enough for her, I hope that she learns to be content. Now, I don't know if he said that last part, but I think that was his sentiment. And I hope that's what she learns. And if I was her after this, I might cancel my tour. Honestly, because, you know, she's having trouble selling tickets. I might cancel my tour. I might be like, hey, put out a statement. Hey, I hear you loud and clear. Tour is canceled. Goodbye. I mean, I don't know. I think she's always tried to do too much, though. And we did let her get away with it for a long time. And we just simply aren't doing that anymore. And that is what we learned in March when it came to JLo. Let's move on. All right, to take it back to social media really quickly, social media influencers that had a tough March. I want to talk for a second about Jackie Aina. I have talked about her before on this channel. The first time I talked about Jackie was in response to something people were saying a few years ago regarding influencers and them not being relatable anymore. So they don't post and, you know, them outgrowing their audience. Jackie's run into that a couple of times as her platforms have continued to grow, as she's continued to venture out and do more things and continue to just blossom and flourish in front of our eyes. She's had her share of mess ups, but for the most part, she's done an incredible job figuring out how to last and develop in a positive way. Having started off just uploading videos to YouTube, you know, when she was, years ago. I think her first videos, I think she's been doing it since like 2009. Like, she's been around for a minute. And I just think even if her content isn't always for me, I'm not a perfume girly. It's an expensive habit that I am not excited by. So I'm not a perfume person. And I don't really care about house cleaning content. I like to see it sometimes. It's very aesthetic, but I'm not I'll never forget, though, how she showed up in the 2010s and helped me understand this thing and this about makeup and this and this and this. I'll never forget it. So I'll always hold her to a certain regard and follow and try and support her, especially when she takes time out to have the tough conversations. In February, she spoke out about something called TikTok pretty, and it ain't nothing but pretty privilege over on TikTok. And she talked about how being and looking a certain way will make the algorithms work for you, et cetera, et cetera. And, she was like, don't gaslight me. Don't tell me, I know what people say to me. I'm in this industry. I know. And hey, anytime you say, I look a certain way so I don't get certain treatment, it opens up all kinds of arguments, blah, blah, blah. I told someone, I said, I'm happy she said it, because I do think you need to have an established platform to have a conversation like that without it becoming all that you're known for. But it also ends up being a conversation that is completely, it doesn't really go anywhere, because you have so many people who are going to say, that's not real, it's not real. And it's ridiculous. Anyway. So she does take time to have tougher conversations, which I think is important. She talks about a lot of stuff. But one thing that consistently comes up with Jackie is people trying her. People, saying, okay, well, I don't like this about her. I don't like that. And this past month in March, what they decided they didn't like was that Jackie will block you if you call her an auntie. If you say, oh, hey, auntie, blah, blah, blah. And I have feelings about this because I'm a little bit older than her, and I know what it's like to face ageism on the internet. It's pretty much been the story since I started posting. I'm going to talk about this in another video, so I'm not going to go into too many details now. But let me just say, I know how mean the internet can be when it comes to age. Also, I know in certain ethnic communities, certain countries, I know that an auntie is basically like, it's like a mom, or like somebody that you desexualize. They're not young anymore. They're not vibrant anymore. They're someone that is kind of stale. And I know that some people can say, oh, it's a term of endearment, but it's also a term of you're putting somebody out to pasture and saying, hey, well, let the young kids take it, auntie. We got it from here. I know that I used to follow a Indian influencer, Farah Dukai, and she would talk about the aunties who were judgmental, who didn't understand, they weren't modern. They gave criticism nobody asked for. An auntie is generally somebody, an auntie or an uncle, they have a higher status, but they're not young anymore. And there's someone that you can, you just kind of brush them to the side. And I feel like Jackie's very, very particular about not wanting to be called that, because she does know and has seen the criticisms that can come at women if they're still making content online after a certain age. And those conversations and those comments can go south really quickly. And people brought up that she used to refer to herself as an auntie here on YouTube. It's cute to be an auntie, and it's cute to have those names and to call yourself a grandma when you're in your 20s. I see it all the time. I used to do it, okay? However, when you are actually of older age and most of your audience is younger than you, and they start calling you that, it just comes with a lot of implications that aren't always positive. So I understand her saying, hey, don't call me that. She's actually said, hey, I'm not your auntie. I'm not related to you. Don't call me that. And so someone called her that, and Jackie blocked them. And oh my God, it started this downpour of people, talking about, oh, what does she think? She's almost 36 years old. She's almost twice my age. Yeah, you an auntie, girl. Get used to it. And I just think it's notable. It's notable that we really tend to just judge ages or how someone should feel about their age from our perspective. And I like the fact that so many people were coming to her defense and saying, it's not just about like the name or the title. It's about someone's boundaries and what they are okay with being referred to as. And if somebody says no, they mean no. And while it might seem harsh to a follower of hers that they've been blocked, I have heard Jackie speak before about how serious it is that you protect your mental health when you are a creator and influencer, especially of her size. And she made a video a little while ago, and I recorded it, but I'm not going to show it because she posted it on her stories. But she basically said, I had to make a decision a long time ago when I first got out here and realized how people really were and the things they would say to you without thinking about it and the ways they would come at you and trying to, I had to make a decision for how I was going to set my boundaries for myself. And I had to make a decision not to care how people judged me. I'm paraphrasing her here. So I thought that was something that happened. And it happened also, I said I wasn't a perfume girly, but it happened on the tails of her, or in addition to her announcing her new Forever Mood perfume collection. Jackie's talked a lot about perfumes in the past few years. And so she has this new perfume collection based off of her candle or in alignment with her Forever Mood scent company. And people had a hard time or didn't like the font. They didn't like the bottle. It was giving TJ Maxx. It's not giving luxury. Again, I'm out of that conversation. I don't care. But she made a video responding to that. And that, I think, is just an example of the type of thing that she's had to build a sort of a barrier around herself to not, because what people don't understand when they're on the outside, when you put something out in the world, you love it, you're sensitive about it, and they come through with, oh my God, like, this is so stupid, like just the most visceral comment out of nowhere. It can really just throw you for a loop. It can erode you. And when you're at her level, millions of followers on several different apps, I can imagine the amount of, that she has to take in all the time. So she also had a dramatic March, and I hope that things are better in April. The last person who had a dramatic March, and this is something I didn't expect, and it happened, or the last public figure, it happened right at the end. Like, I think Saturday, I'm filming this after, so Friday maybe. Lizzo posted on her Instagram that she's quitting. She does not want to be in the spotlight anymore. She wants to let it go because she's being dragged in her personal life and online and blah, blah, blah. So she quits. I had a feeling something was up with Lizzo when she posted this TikTok. I felt like, I don't think Lizzo, I'm trying to figure out what she expects. I'm very honest about the fact that, like, when I discover things, I'm like, oh, that's how they feel? Oh, okay, well then I guess this isn't what I thought it is. All right, I will pull back. And I never expect things to go back to how they were. And I say that because Lizzo, she went through what she went through last year with the lawsuit. It's probably still happening. I don't know. Being called out for being terrible behind the scenes. Again, that likability, it will come back. It will come at you. It will come at you. We can't be mad at how they treated Amanda when that's nothing new. That is nothing new. The only person who nobody needs to be surprised there. If people don't like you, eventually they will let you know. You will find out. Anyway, and I speak from experience. On both sides of it. On both sides of letting someone know finally and of being let know. Hey, we didn't like that. Oh, damn. All right. Thank you. Noted. Anyway, so Lizzo, I don't think she ever realized, like, it's just not going to go back to how it was after something like that. There are some people, usually white men, who can bounce back from having a really bad public image. But Lizzo was already skating on thin ice. Well, with being, we already know there was so much, she already had to deal with so much from trolls just starting off, and then having that occur. It was, listen, again, if I was her, whenever all of that stuff started coming out, I probably would have, I don't know if I would have returned to TikTok. I don't know. But I don't know what could have happened to make her say I quit, because I felt like she's been doing a good job at still going, even though I don't know if that's what I would have done. But I will say that I don't think she's going to quit forever. I don't think she's going to quit the music industry. I think she meant like, I quit social media. And I don't know. You need to have, I feel like when you have a public profile, I'm working on this thing this year called No Fresh Feelings, which means that when I'm going through something, I got to realize that it's going to reverberate publicly. So even if I feel like at the time, hey, I've thought about this, hey man, the more higher level it is, or the bigger reaction it might get, give yourself more space for when you actually decide to tell other people about it. Kind of how I feel. So I feel like Lizzo posting this might have happened in the heat of the moment. Something might have been down. She might have sat down and Or she could have been thinking about it for a while, but I don't think she quits. I think she will be back. I think she might quit social media for a while. I think that's what that was. But overall, I just hate that she's so disappointed. But I also am just like, well, what did you expect? You know, the things you were accused of were pretty big, and people don't forget. And you might forgive yourself, but you can't expect others to get on board with that. Get used to your new normal, which can be hard, and I don't think she ever did that. Anyway, that is the end of this incredibly long video. As for me personally, my March was busy, but I'll have more on that in a second. I just wanted to talk about what had happened with some public figures. Did I leave anyone out? Did you have a great March? I don't know. Feel free, or was yours dramatic too? Feel free to comment in the comment box below. And as always, thank you for watching.